Scenes in a Roman Theater by Elsa Marston. Scenes in a Roman Theater is a short story. And Elsa Marston is an author that grew in the United States and she enjoyed writing essays for school assignments. She lived throughout the Middle East and Northern Africa, which explains how come the setting of our story is in Tunisia. Her writing focuses on everyday realities of life in Arab societies. That is a small background on our author, Elsa Marston. Now, Scenes in the Roman Theater is a story that takes place over 3 days. Now, the setting of our story is in the Tunisian countryside in a Roman theater, as it shows in the picture of pages 34 and 35. We have a few characters, not many. We have the main character, Hidi. We have another main character, the painter, which we find out later that her name is Delinda. Now, the story takes place over 3 days, as I said, and there are a few other side characters like Hidi's friends, Azuz and Tahar. There's also a very brief mention about Hidi's mother and his brother. Now, Hidi was a young boy who sold straw hats in the Roman theater that his mother weaved from straw, which means or gives us the idea that their family isn't rich. Now, what he does is that he sells hats at the Roman theater to tourists, but he wasn't the best at it. He wasn't very, very good at it. And he wasn't very good at school, too. What he wanted to do, or his dream, was to be like his brother, Tawfiq, and work at resorts and that where he believes there is a lot of money, and that was basically his dream. Until everything changed when he met the painter, Delinda. So what happened is one day, or on the first day of the story, he is done selling the hats, and the tourists have gone. And the day at the Roman theater for tourists is almost ended. And then he was sitting with his straw hats, and his friends came over, Azuz and Tahar. Well, I wouldn't say his friends because they were bullying him at school and at work where he sells hats. They came over, his hats were piled up, they kicked him over, and they were talking, and then that's when Delinda, or the artist, walks in. We know that we knew immediately that she was an artist because she was carrying an easel. There was a palette and she had a canvas. It was very clear that she was a painter. And she came over with another man whom we find out later is her husband. She sits, she sets up her equipment. Azuz and Tahar keep pushing Hidi to go sell her a hat. Hidi decides, why not? I'm going to go over and sell her something. In that part of the story, Hidi does what his bullies tell him to do, which would imply or tell us how weak Hidi is at this point of the story. He doesn't have anything to defend, and he doesn't care much. He goes over, he tries to sell her a hat very politely. She refuses, he stops. Then Azuz and Tahar go over and try to sell her a hat just to spite Hidi or make him angry by showing him that his salesmanship skills are poor. But their method of selling hats is very irritating. They keep bugging the person again and again and again until the person would buy something from them just for them to leave him alone. So that's what they do. They pester people until they buy something. So when Hedy was witnessing how much they were bugging the painter, he decided to interfere. He exploded, kept yelling at them, let her be, let her go, stop pestering her. And that right there is the beginning of the transformation of Hedy's character. A strong person wouldn't burst out like that. Only a weak person does, because he doesn't usually express his feelings. He usually bottles them up. He keeps them inside, and they would increase so much until they explode eventually. That's something, a character or a characteristic or a trait of a weak person. Explosion. And yet, it is the first time we experience Hedy expressing out his feelings and telling people what he really thinks. At that point, the painter thanks him, and she is grateful for him defending her. Afterwards, Hedy sits next to her silent, and they start talking instead of just having an awkward silence. And at the end of that conversation, he offers her that he would be her protector. He would be there to make sure that she works safely. That's how where the conversation between them ended on the first day. On the second day, Hedy goes to work. He finds her there. He goes next to her. He sits. He offers her a drink. He goes to grab sodas. He comes back. He sits next to her, and there is a group of tourists who are walking with a guide um, to see the Roman theater. The guide grabs their attention and points it towards the painter who is painting. They go over, they want to see her work. He steps in. He tells them that she's currently working, she needs to focus. But if they do want to see her work, there will be an exhibition where they can see her work properly. But now is not the most appropriate time for them to watch her work. And that's where the guide grabs the tourists and walk away again. Next, and Azuz and Tahar come over again. He dismisses them this time. He doesn't want them to interrupt her work. Also, on the second day, that was the first time where her husband meets Hedy. He asks her if this boy is bothering you. She says, on the contrary, or exactly the opposite. That would give away how the artist feels about Hedy now. She thinks that he's a very nice person, which would be the first similarity between the two characters, Hedy and the painter, that they're both very nice people. They are nice to people and they are not mean. They're not the mean kind of person. She accepts his soda, his drink, and now she is grateful for him for that he kept her working in silence and making sure that she doesn't get pestered or annoyed by anybody. Her husband meets Hedy, and he knows now that she is working, and there's a small boy who sits around and watch her work. Her husband asks her about the painting and mentions that if she did not finish the painting by a specific date, there would be a money problem, which would give us the idea on how the marriage relationship is working. She is the artist, she sells her paintings for a lot of money, and he sells them for her. So basically, he does not have his own job. No, he sells his wife's paintings. And then again, the way he spoke to her was inappropriate and in an angry tone, which means that he doesn't appreciate her very much, which means that the marriage relationship is not at its best state. He just thinks of her as the money source in the marriage. The day passes, and on the third day, he comes to the theater. He knows where he's supposed to go. There she is again. He goes and sits next to her. And what happened on that day is the result of how Hedy changed and how Delinda changed. She is trying to keep painting the painting that she was painting, and she's lost inspiration. She cannot draw anymore. And Hedi tries to talk to her and joke with her. And in one joke, he tells her, "Why don't you paint me?" She says, "Okay." Hedi tells her that he was joking, he didn't really mean it. She tells him to be quiet and go sit down and don't move. He does what she told him. He goes, he sits down, and she starts painting with a lot of inspiration. By the end of the day, she would have finished painting Hedi, and she decides to give him the painting. As an artist, that was her way to show gratitude, how much Hedi helped her. Her husband comes at the end of the day and he watches her painting, or he watches this new painting, and he tells her that's not the painting that you're supposed to be working on. She tells him, "No, but that's the painting I decided to paint." And this is the first time where we see Delinda stand up to her husband, which would explain how Delinda changed from just obeying her husband silently to standing up to what was right for her. She decided that she's not going to let her husband bully her anymore, and that she would do what she thinks is right. So she gives Hedi the painting, and her husband gets very angry. How come you would give him a painting? And eventually, when she tells him that she wants to give it to him, looks over to Hedi and tells him, "There you go, kid, you have an original Delinda." Now we know that at this point, we know that Delinda is a very famous artist, and her paintings make a lot of money. What happens at the end of the story would show how much Hedi changed. When the painting fell over, he grabs a tool and he cleans up the painting, changes something in it. Now, this would show us that Hedi is changing something in a painting that he knows is very expensive and is worth a lot of money, just because he doesn't like it, which is not like Hedi on the first day, because the Hedi we got to know on the first day is very weak and would never change something even a lot less significant than this, and let alone only because he feels like it. He changed the painting because he felt like it. And that is the complete opposite of the type of person we met on the first day. This would show us how much Hedi has grown stronger. And that would conclude the scenes from the Roman theater and our story about Hedi and Delinda.